All right, fingers crossed that the audio works. There's a slight delay when I start this show and the chat messages start popping up. So, you guys are going to start putting messages in the chat screen, and I'm going to see them in a little bit. And I'm hoping the first messages that come in here are going to be saying, hey, your audio works. We can hear you. You sound great. It's awesome. I'm really hoping that's the case. I need someone to tell me that they can hear me right now because we had the same issue. Yes, Zach Wells, my man, says the audio works. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate it. Listen, we tried to do this last night 3 times. 3 times we tried to do this show. Another Zach Herbster comes in and says it works well. Appreciate it. Brock McDonagh, our guy, David Masenda, everybody jumping in and telling me the audio works. Listen, we tried this 3 times last night on Tuesday night to do this show a week early or a night early because of the news of Kedon Slovis announcing he was going to transfer from USC to Pitt. And so I thought, all right, this is perfect. Sometimes we do these reaction shows. We try and jump in and when there's big news, we come out and do a reaction show just to react to the news, right? I mean, instant reaction type of stuff. It's like the post-game shows, but we do it when there's big news. And I thought, what could be bigger? They just got a transfer quarterback who's going to come in and play and maybe be the missing piece. You know what I mean? Answer the biggest question. I thought, this is huge. We're going to do a live show, and we're going to do it. And we're just going to do the Wednesday night show on Tuesday. This will be our show for the week. This will be perfect. We'll get it taken care of. And then the audio didn't work. So we tried it again, and the audio didn't work. And so we tried it again, and the audio didn't work. And I finally threw in the towel after that and spent the rest of the night, quite literally, spent the rest of my time last night trying to figure out what was wrong with the audio. And ultimately, I did nothing. I changed nothing because I hadn't changed anything to get the audio broken. So I figured I would apply the same philosophy, the same approach, because I'm effectively the IT department here at Panther-Lair.com. And so I decided I would take the same approach and do nothing. And the audio worked. I got it working like later in the night. It was like after 10 o'clock or something. So yeah, I monkeyed around with this for like an hour. And finally got it working. And I said, okay, we're going to go back and do the show. All right, we still got it. Kedon Slovis, still a huge topic to discuss. Still something we definitely want to talk about. This will be a great show on Wednesday night. Can't wait to get to it. But maybe there was a reason the audio didn't work, people. Maybe there was a reason that technology let us down. Because technology did me dirty earlier this week. All right, technology did me real dirty. When it took the biggest Kenny Pickett show of the season, I mean, like, we did 18 episodes of the Kenny Pickett show, and none was bigger than that final episode. First time Kenny Pickett spoke publicly after announcing he was going to skip the Peach Bowl. Huge opportunity here. I mean, an exclusive. In a world where that word doesn't mean much anymore. It's like breaking. There isn't much in the way of breaking news anymore. You get things every now and then. But the reality is nothing's really breaking. Well, exclusives don't really exist all that much, but we had one. We had an exclusive with this final Kenny Pickett show. I couldn't wait. I was so pumped up about it. And we taped it on Monday night, our regular taping time, Monday night at 9 o'clock, and it was awesome. Kenny was great. I thought we had a great conversation. I thought we talked about a lot of great topics. Covered everything, and I thought he was very open. I thought he was very honest. I thought he was very candid. I thought he shared a lot of insight about his decision to skip the Peach Bowl, and I thought it was great. And I thought Pitt fans are really going to appreciate this, and they're going to enjoy it. And this is going to be a great episode. And this is probably going to get our best engagement numbers and all those kinds of things. And then I realized the audio was just completely screwed, and I didn't realize it until I released it the next day. Now, fortunately, Kenny's audio is pretty good. If you go back and watch that episode of the Kenny Pickett show, you can hear everything from Kenny. You can hear him answer the most important questions and hear him really talk about that stuff. And it's great. My audio is completely screwed. I sound like Max Headroom. And for people of a certain age, that reference will actually make sense. But that is what I sounded like, was Max Headroom. Yeah. And it was terrible. It was a complete disaster. And so technology did me real dirty earlier in the week. And I thought, so that was Tuesday morning. I realized that, I guess it happened on Monday night. The technology did me dirty. And then on Tuesday night, it happened again. Technology did me dirty and prevented me from doing this live stream last night. But I think technology was making it up to me for Monday night. By preventing me from doing a show last night, it allowed me to wait and do the show now, when not only do we have Kedon Slovis to talk about, but we've got Carter Warren and Marcus Minor and Owen Drexel and Gabe Hoy to talk about. Because those dudes, all four of them, announced on Wednesday that they're going to come back and play another year at Pitt. And now, I mean, I wanted to start and go through each of these stories sort of independently and talk about what Kedon Slovis means and how he got to Pitt and talk about his backstory. And I want to talk about these offensive linemen and what they mean and how they're going to impact the team and all this kind of stuff. And the reality is, we're still kind of in the first 10 minutes of the show. I should be taking my time. I should be building up to things a little bit, let people filter in. But here's the deal. With a transfer quarterback and every offensive lineman who played a meaningful snap for them returning in 2022, there are very, very few holes on this Pitt football team right now. As this roster is currently constructed, there's not a lot in the way of holes. Because the biggest holes that were going to exist heading into this season were at quarterback and the offensive line. And they're not the only holes. There are some other things, and we'll talk about it. But the biggest holes on this roster for 2022 were at quarterback and the offensive line. The holes that were going to be the toughest to fill, where you had the least amount of experience with the players who were going to be stepping into key roles. Arguably the positions that had the biggest impact on the team's success this season. Those were going to be the biggest question marks. Those are going to be the biggest holes, and those were the biggest issues with the team. The things that could potentially hold them back, prevent them from repeating as Coastal champions and competing for the ACC championship again. Those were the big question marks. And in the span of 24 hours, 48, give or take, 36, they all got answered. Every single freaking one of them. And now you look at this Pitt roster, you say, you got a quarterback, and we'll talk about him. We'll talk about Kedon Slovis. We'll talk about what you should expect from Kedon Slovis, what he did at USC, red flags, encouraging signs, all those things. We'll talk about that. We got all night. All right, and we'll go, I said it on Twitter, we'll go as long as we need to tonight because we got a lot to talk about. But you got Kedon Slovis, you got him at quarterback, and we'll talk about the other guys too. We'll talk about the rest of the quarterback competition and everything, but just bear with me for a second. You got the quarterback, you got the running backs. We all know they've got the running backs. You've got Jordan Addison back as a Biletnikoff winner. You've got Jared Wayne to play with him. You've got Jaden Bradley and Jalen Barton kind of behind them. You probably need a little bit more depth to fill in there. We'll see who else can kind of emerge. You've got the offensive line. I mean, that is settled. You've got 7 guys who started games this past season, all slated to come back. You've got a second-team freshman All-American tight end. You're going to need a second tight end to emerge, but you've got Gavin Bartholomew coming back. Defensive end, if Deslin Alexander decides not to come back, you'll need to find a 4th defensive end. Not your 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, but a 4th defensive end. Your D tackles, you lose Keyshawn Camp, you return 4 guys who played tons of snaps. Linebacker, you've got some depth issues. Linebacker, you're probably going to be relying on some youth, but you also return Servassier Dennis, a guy who potentially could be or should be an all-conference player as a senior in 2022. Cornerback, you lose Damari Mathis, but you return the other 3 guys who played a ton of snaps, plus a bunch of young guys who I think are really promising and encouraging. And safety, you've got everybody back. Where are the holes on this team? The holes are linebacker depth, maybe a 4th defensive end, and a 2nd tight end. Those are the holes on a roster that's returning a Biletnikoff Award winner, every major, highly productive skill player on offense, almost all of your producers on defense, again, outside of that linebacker depth that we talked about, on a team that won the Coastal Division, won 10 games in the regular season, and won the ACC championship. And finished the regular season as a top 12 team, or finished, post-conference championship game number 12 in the nation. the college football playoff rankings. In the span of like 36 hours, we went from talking about what Pitt could do to compete in the Coastal and where they might end up and all this to, brother, they're the favorite. And I don't know if they're going to get voted the preseason number one. And hell, I'm sitting here talking about this on December 22nd. You know, they're not going to release an ACC preseason poll until July 22nd or something like that. It's going to be 7 months before they release the preseason poll. But who are you putting above Pitt right now in the Coastal Division preseason number one? Who are you voting above them? The only team that you could even possibly consider making a case for is Miami, because they've got that damn U on the side of their helmet and they have a really good quarterback. And at some point, that U on the side of their helmet is going to be worth something. We keep being told that it's worth something. At some point, it's going to matter. But the reality is, I mean, they've got a really good quarterback. A guy who should be, probably preseason, I don't know if he'd be preseason player of the year. But I mean, I think there are going to be a lot of high expectations on Tyler Van Dyke. He looked really good last year. I'm not going to deny that. But that's kind of the main thing the U has going for them. And they brought in a coach who's got experience. He's a new coach, but he's not a rookie coach. He's got experience as a head coach. He's had a lot of success. He knows the area and the terrain and all of that. I think he's going to do well there. I think Miami's going to be tough. But are you voting Miami ahead of Pitt right now? When you look at everything Pitt's bringing back, from the team that won the division last year, from the team that won the conference last year, from the team that was, without question, the best team in the conference last year. Are you putting Miami ahead of Pitt? I mean, what am I talking about? I know who I'm talking to. I know who my audience is right here. You guys are not putting Miami ahead of Pitt. Pitt's the favorite to win the Coastal. And I think, depending on what you believe about Clemson's ability to bounce back, Clemson's ability to reload, I mean, this is the team with a target on its back in the conference. And it's not going to be easy. That game at Louisville is, that's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a great road trip. Love going down there. Haven't been down there in way too long. I can't remember the last time I went to Louisville. 2014 maybe? Did Pitt play down there in 2014? I forget. It doesn't matter. But it's a great road trip. If you haven't gone to Louisville, you got to go to Louisville. It's a great place to watch a game. It's a great city to visit. Always had a lot of fun. Every time I went down there on a Big East trip. But that's going to be a challenging game. But right now, as the defending conference champions, with the talent they've got returning and what they've brought in, this is the team that's going to have a target on its back. This is the team that's going to have to play as the favorites in every game this season. This is the team that's going to be looked at as having a real chance to repeat. And it's all based on what's happened in the last 36 hours. I mean, at this point, the last 48 hours, I guess. No. Kedon Slovis committed on Tuesday, right? So, I mean, we're talking about 24 hours, 24-hour news cycle. Maybe even less if you consider what the offensive lineman announced around 11 this morning that they were coming back. I mean, you're talking about a 12-hour news cycle, or about a 24-hour news cycle. We'll call it 20 hours. Over the course of 20 hours, Pitt went from trying to figure out ways, what they could possibly do to compete in the Coastal again, to being potentially an odds-on favorite to win the whole damn thing. It's wild. It's wild. Of course, I always do a terrible job of introducing the show. It is the Panther-Lair Show. I am Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. I presume that every person who's tuning into this, I don't think you happen upon this accidentally. You're not flipping through the channels and Kill Bill is on. You know what I mean? You're not flipping through the channels and, Gone in 60 Seconds. Haven't seen that one in a while. Who's in this again? Oh, I didn't realize. I forgot Delroy Lindo's in this. You're not confusing me with Delroy Lindo for a lot of reasons. But, you probably know. Chris Peak, Panther-Lair.com. The website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. And I say that every week. Those words go in one ear and out the other. But seriously, if you've read Panther-Lair.com for the last 2 weeks, you've known everything that's going on. Like, you knew over the weekend that Kedon Slovis was a real possibility for Pitt. And that it was the expectation that Pitt would get him. Said a bunch of times that there was a real possibility this offensive line could all return. That all the guys who started could come back. So when I say those, that stuff about being most comprehensive and place, to get all the best Pitt information and all that stuff, best Pitt coverage, I mean, it's been true for the last couple of weeks. I don't speak to before that. I won't speak to what's coming next. But over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of info for you on the Panther-Lair.com message board. So, I mean, if you're a Pitt fan and you're looking for coverage of Pitt football, you need to, and basketball and recruiting and everything else going on in the world of Pitt sports, you need to get to Panther-Lair.com. You also need home field. I'm just going to shout out that retro rock look right now. Vintage rock look, homefieldapparel.com. They make the best college gear. I mean, that's just the truth. And you're not going to go there and buy, windbreakers or visors or things like that. You're going to get t-shirts and sweatshirts. And when you do, they're going to be some of the most comfortable t-shirts you've ever worn with some of the best designs you've ever seen on college gear. It's great stuff. It's unique stuff. It's not what you're going to find in the team store. And the team store has great stuff. But you're going to find some unique designs and graphics and images on super high quality shirts, t-shirts and sweatshirts. So homefieldapparel.com, you've got to go check them out. And if you're a first time shopper, use the promo code LAIR, L-A-I-R, and you can get 15% off. So Lair, like Panther-Lair, you can see it. Oh, wrong finger. L-A-I-R. See how that's right there? You can get all of that. You can get 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Also, make sure while you're here, subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's, this is where we do things like this. And so you want to know if we're going to go live for a reaction show like I talked about, the other, that we were going to do last night. Well, you want to make sure you don't miss that. Subscribe and turn on your notifications. And then that way you'll know when we're going live and you can be like, oh, better go check out and see what the Delroy Lindo of Pitt coverage is talking about tonight. So, make sure you check that button. Like the video, that's great. Like the live stream while you're watching it, but make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. So we appreciate that. All right. I, earlier in the day or this afternoon, I put a poll on Twitter and I'm going to check and see where it's at as far as, the voting. I put a poll on Twitter. We've got, as of now, the poll's been up for a little more than 4 hours. I asked which news was bigger for Pitt this week, and it's got close to 1,300 votes, and it's pretty split. I said, which news was bigger for Pitt this week? Transfer quarterback or the whole offensive line coming back? And like I said, it's been about 4 hours. We got about 1,300 votes, and it's close. 54% voted for the whole offensive line coming back. 46% voted for the transfer quarterback. And a lot of people asked if they could just vote for everything. A lot of people said tie, vote for both or yes or things like that because they're both huge, obviously. And like I said at the start, they both answer two big questions for Pitt. Even though the offensive line is winning the voting, I kind of want to talk about Kedon Slovis first because that's sort of been what's been on my mind for the last few days. I think since the weekend when it seemed pretty clear that he was probably going to end up at Pitt. I've been thinking a lot about Kedon Slovis, reading a lot about Kedon Slovis, and looking at, watching some of his game film and those kinds of things, and trying to, form an opinion on him. Because he's an interesting guy. And you probably know the backstory by now, but, 3-star recruit out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Not a ton of Power 5 offers, 4 or 5 Power 5 offers. USC gets a look at him. They end up offering him. And he really, what's interesting is he was, I'm trying to think of what the word was. I had Ryan Young from our USC Rivals site. I had him on for like a podcast. If you subscribe to our podcasts on, Apple or Spotify or wherever, you'll notice that a little thing popped up today. It was like a 12-minute episode, a little 12-minute soundbite you could listen to. And it was Ryan Young, who's the publisher of the Rivals USC site. And we talked about, I wanted to get him on just for 10, 15 minutes just to give some insight on Kedon Slovis. And so what he said was that Slovis in the 2019 recruiting class was sort of this bridge, this kind of like a gap player, a gap recruit between JT Daniels and Bryce Young. Bryce Young was committed to USC at that point. And so the thought was we're just going to take this guy, he's going to fill a roster spot. He's going to be a backup. He's going to be a career backup. He's going to fill a roster spot. We like him. We think he could be really good, but this is probably what he's going to end up being. I mean, USC didn't say this publicly, but this was sort of the perception at the time. This is a bridge guy. This is a gap guy. This is, get a quarterback in every class. It's a good rule to live by. Not necessarily one that Pat Narduzzi seems to believe in, although I think you could kind of break it down that he's more or less ended up with a quarterback in every class. But this is what he was supposed to fill. You've got the superstar stud in JT Daniels. You've got the superstar stud in Bryce Young. You're not, you're probably not going to get a superstar stud in the class in between those guys. So you take a lower rated guy, a guy with a little bit fewer options who could come in and be a good, solid program guy for you, a quality backup. And who knows, maybe he surprises and wins the job or something like that. So they bring him in. And he's there as a freshman in 2019. And in the first game of the season, JT Daniels gets hurt. And Kedon Slovis steps in. And he doesn't just come in as a program guy. He's playing as a true freshman, but he doesn't come in as a program guy, a quality guy, a guy to just bridge the gap between Daniels and Young. Young, of course, ended up going to Alabama. But he doesn't come in just to bridge that gap. He comes in and plays really well. And he throws for 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. And, ends up being the offensive freshman of the year, offensive newcomer of the year in the Pac-12, plays so well that JT Daniels is like, all right, I got to go, right? He ends up at Georgia. I mean, the reason JT Daniels ends up at Georgia is because Kedon Slovis played as well as he did in 2019. Now, he gets hurt at the end of that season. He gets hurt in the Holiday Bowl. I think it was an elbow injury. And he comes out of that. He's got to rehab that injury. It takes 3-4 months where he's just not even throwing at all. And he gets out of that 3-4 months, and now do the math on this. That injury was at the end of the 2019 season. He rehabs for 3 or 4 months. Where is it now? It's like March, April 2020. What's going on in March and April of 2020? No organized football activities, right? So he's 3-4 months without throwing while he's rehabbing. And then he goes into, then it's COVID and everything's shut down. He's got no opportunity to be around the team, no opportunity to be around the strength staff, no opportunity to participate in organized football activities. He's not just sitting around, but he's not doing what most Division I college quarterbacks will be doing in that situation after coming off an injury. And so you come into the 2020 season, and he ends up leading him to a 5-1 record, the Pac-12 championship game. They lose, but he ends up being first-team all Pac-12 quarterback. But by all accounts, there was something off. That he wasn't necessarily totally healthy. And there was a shoulder injury, I think, in there. And not really sure about him. But he goes into this past season. He's the starter, but he gets hurt in the first game. He gets like a neck injury or something. And Jackson Dart, 4-star freshman, comes in and he plays well. But then he gets hurt. So Slovis is back in. But then he gets hurt again. And it ends up, when they were both on the field, and of course USC being a complete mess this season, they fire Clay Helton a couple of games into the season as their head coach. So they have an interim head coach for like 3/4 of the season, maybe more. This interim head coach tries to put in this like quarterback rotation. Ryan Young from Trojansports.com, the USC rival site, was telling us that there was a game where, look, the plan was two drives, and we're going back and forth no matter what. We're sticking to the plan. There was a game where Kedon Slovis came out and threw 2 touchdowns on his drive, and guess what? He's back out on the 3rd drive, even though he just threw 2 touchdown passes. And so it's a mess. It's a poorly handled situation. It's as much of a train wreck inside the program as it looked outside, and I think we all watched USC and said, the hell is going on out there? They're a mess out there. And Kedon Slovis, I don't know if he was surpassed by Jackson Dart, by the freshman, but I think he could see the writing on the wall that, Jackson Dart is the more highly touted guy. Lincoln Riley gets hired. He's going to probably bring in someone. And Kedon Slovis says, all right, I got to try something else. I got to try somewhere else. I got to look for a new opportunity. And so he goes into the transfer portal. And he goes in last Monday. And when he goes in, almost immediately, as he told me, he pushed all the buttons and went into the transfer portal and put his phone down and went and worked out. And when he came back, phone was just loaded with messages. Look, I got all the notifications there. You see them? And that's what his phone looked like. And it was all these schools. It was Notre Dame, and it was Arizona, and it was Cal, and Auburn, and Nebraska, and I think Oregon State was another one. I mean, there were schools all over the place reaching out, saying, hey, we want to talk to you. And one of those schools was Pitt. Eventually, he ends up connecting with Pitt, and he goes from there. And as he looked at the situation, and as he told me, he saw that Pitt had won the ACC championship, and he thought, oh man, this Pitt team, they were really good. They probably lost about a bunch of veteran guys, probably lost a bunch of older guys. And then he gets on the phone with like Graham Wilbert, the recruiting director, and then he gets on the phone with Pat Narduzzi, the head coach, and they're like, no man, we're not losing a bunch of guys. On the contrary, we've got the Biletnikoff Award winner coming back. On the contrary, we've got all of our offensive linemen coming back. So I think Pitt knew at that point, and I think they were able to tell Kedon Slovis that was the case. They say, we've got our freshman All-American tight end coming back. We've got a bunch of our guys on defense coming back. We've got these 3 running backs who are really friggin' good coming back. We just need a quarterback. And Kedon Slovis gets interested. Now, as a lot of people have noticed, as a lot of people pointed out and said, and this was observed from the time Slovis went into the transfer portal, maybe even before, he's got a connection to Pitt. His girlfriend plays for the Pitt soccer team. And I asked him about that, because how couldn't you, right? And I said, come on, how when you started thinking about transferring, were you already thinking like, well, it'd be pretty cool to go to Pitt because my girlfriend's out there? And he said, not really. He's like, it's convenient. It really worked out well that she's there. It worked out well that Pitt had all these things that I wanted, and she's there too. But he said she actually got mad at him because he told her, look, this is a football decision I have to make. Like before he picked Pitt, when he was talking about going into the transfer portal, I'm guessing she was probably like, oh, you should come to Pitt. They need a quarterback. Kenny Pickett's leaving. And he was like, look, this is a football decision. I'm not going to make this decision based on where you are. He said she got a little mad at him, actually. So I don't think that was the biggest factor. It certainly didn't hurt Pitt's case. But I think the biggest factor for Kedon Slovis is he looked at the talent returning, the success Pitt had last season with that talent, and the possibility to go out and do it again. And so he picked Pitt, and he committed to Pitt. And the biggest question that I think we're going to be watching over the next 7 months, 8 months heading into training camp, 9 months heading into the season, is how healthy is he? Where is he health-wise? He says that the injuries he had last season, the neck injury and the hamstring injury, were pretty minor. They weren't a big deal, kind of like the elbow injury that he had or a shoulder injury. He needs to be at 100%. And he said he feels pretty good. He said his body feels good. He said, he's going to be able to really spend the next 8 months, focusing on his body and focusing on rehabbing and focusing on getting 100%. If he's back to 100%, I mean, go watch the film from his freshman year. It's as impressive as you're going to see. I mean, he earned every bit of those 30 touchdowns and 3,000 yards that he threw for. He threw 58 touchdowns in his USC career. It's like 7,000 yards over the 3 seasons, with one of those seasons being a half season. And he looks the part. And not just in a Max Brown, boy, he's tall and has a big arm, looks the part. He's making plays in games. Week after week after week, he's making plays in games. And he's leading comeback victories. Let me see. I think he had 3 comeback wins last season: Arizona, Arizona State, and UCLA. Although that might have been 2020. I forget. I have to look. But he was really, really good. And if he can be close to that level again at Pitt, like I said, I mean, this answers, one of your biggest question marks. You went from the quarterback who had the best season in Pitt history by any quarterback. You know what I mean? The best season by a Pitt quarterback in school history. And I don't know how you replace that. But finding a guy who started all these games in the Pac-12, who won all these games in the Pac-12, who threw for all these yards in the Pac-12, who was one of the best, in 2020 was, as I say, the first team all-conference quarterback. That seems like a pretty good direction to go. And there's been some, questions of, well, they played effectively an air raid offense at USC. How's that going to translate? Pat Narduzzi's not going to go to an air raid offense. So I asked Kedon Slovis that as well, and he said, look, I think I can play in any kind of offense. Not any kind of offense, but anything that features a drop-back passer. I think I can do that. He said, yeah, I played in an air raid at USC, and I played in a pro-style offense at high school when his offensive coordinator was Kurt Warner. And so he's pretty confident he can, adapt to just about any offensive system. And I would say, he's got the arm. He's got the arm strength. He's got the accuracy, and he's got the touch. He's going to have the offensive line to block for him, and he's going to have Jordan Addison and Gavin Bartholomew and Jalen Barden and Jared Wayne and Jaden Bradley catching passes from him, and he's going to be handing off to Izzy Abanikanda and Vincent Davis and Rodney Hammond. You tell me what's not to like about that situation. And I've seen some people talk about not Ricky Town, but Max Brown, and I don't think it's really comparable. I mean, Max Brown didn't play as much or as effectively as Kedon Slovis did at USC. This is a huge, huge pickup for Pitt. I think Slovis has to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks that were available on the transfer market. I just saw that the LSU quarterback, Miles Brennan, took his name out of the transfer portal. I mean, you look at the guys who are available. I mean, Dylan Gabriel, from UCF would be one of the high priority guys. I guess Spencer Rattler and Bo Nix. I mean, there are some big name guys who were high on the list of transfer possibilities. Zach Calzada at Texas A&M, Calzada, who actually visited Pitt, and I think Pitt was looking at, but I think I don't know if they had the option to take one guy over the other, but I think they were effectively looking at Calzada and Slovis as serving the same purpose. Guys who have maybe 2 years left max. Although Calzada, I guess, would have 3, I think, with his COVID year, with his super senior year. But I mean, they were looking at him effectively as guys who would come in and play right away, and I think they preferred Slovis. I think Slovis was their number 1 guy. And I think if you look at the transfer market overall, he's got to be one of the top 5 guys, and Pitt just got him. And Pitt got him because of the success they had this past season. And here's a funny note for you. You are certainly aware that Pitt doesn't have an offensive coordinator right now, right? And Pat Narduzzi just landed one of the top transfer quarterbacks, one of the top quarterbacks on the transfer market without an offensive coordinator. And that's not the first time he's done that. By my count, I think he has gotten commitments from or gotten guys to enroll, quarterbacks to enroll without an offensive coordinator. This is now like 5 times. Like Kenny Pickett enrolled in January of 2017 before Sean Watson was hired. After Matt Canada left and before Sean Watson was hired. He enrolled without an offensive coordinator. Max Brown committed to Pitt and enrolled without an offensive coordinator. Davis Bevel enrolled in January of 2019 after Sean Watson had been fired and before Mark Whipple was hired. So that's 3 guys. This makes 4. Thomas McVitie, I mean, you could throw him into the mix too. He didn't enroll, but he stayed committed. Thanks to the efforts of Pat Narduzzi. And, I mean, you could probably throw Ricky Town in there as well if you want. I think he committed and signed and enrolled without an offensive coordinator in place. But this guy, Narduzzi, pointing in the wrong direction. He's off the screen anyway. Pat Narduzzi, I mean, you gotta give him credit for this, right? I mean, he's recruiting quarterbacks without an offensive coordinator, and he's made a habit of it, of getting quarterbacks to commit and or enroll with no offensive coordinator. It seems pretty remarkable to me to pull that off. And I asked Kedon Slovis about that. I was like, what do you are you concerned about that? Or how is that addressed? What did they say about that? And he said, look, that was actually my number 1 concern with Pitt. He was like, it was really the only drawback with Pitt. Everything was perfect, except for the fact that they didn't have a coordinator. And he said, that Pat Narduzzi was like, look, we're not going to bring somebody in who doesn't fit your skill set. And I think there's probably just sort of a general assurance about that Pat Narduzzi is going to get probably a pro-style offensive coordinator. Certainly not someone who's going to return to an option offense or anything crazy like that, a read option or zone read, anything like that. It's going to be, more or less a pro-style offensive coordinator, which, Slovis said he can fit. But the other interesting thing is that Kedon Slovis said he talked to Kenny Pickett. And he had a conversation with Pickett about this, and Pickett talked about his experience kind of going through the same thing, because Pickett, again, enrolled at Pitt without an offensive coordinator in place, and then was at Pitt for the transition between Sean Watson and Mark Whipple. And Pickett gave Slovis some advice about how Pat Narduzzi would handle it, and about how, what to expect out of the situation. And, I think that sold him. I think that sold Kedon Slovis on Pitt, and just the whole package, the whole opportunity coming together, just sold him on it. And what a score! I mean, we're sitting here, we'll see what happens when he actually plays in games for Pitt. But boy, it looks like a home run right now. It really looks like a home run right now that makes this team a legitimate, contender to repeat as ACC champs. And that's as far as I'm going to go with that right now. All right. I know, look, I can push this to some extremes about what Pitt can accomplish in 2022 with the guys with the roster that they've got constructed right now. I'm not going to go beyond saying I think they're contenders for the ACC championship. That's as far as I'll go for now. You know what I'm talking about. You're thinking it too. You're letting your mind wander. You're letting your imagination run wild, and that's fine. I'm going to stop at the ACC championship. December 3rd, I think it is, in Charlotte. I'm going to stop there. Let's set the expectations for Pitt to make it back to Charlotte, and then we'll build from there as the season goes on. Fair? All right. Let's jump into the chat, because there's a lot of chat messages already rolling in. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys bearing with it while I go on a rather extended monologue to start this thing off. Remember, if you want to make sure your comments and questions get read and answered, you can always be a super chatter. You click that little $sign down there at the bottom and support the podcast. We very much appreciate it, because really we're just doing this because it's fun. You know what I mean? We sit down here on a Wednesday night and talk a little Pitt for a while. And I appreciate everybody who tunes in, and definitely appreciate all the super chatters. So thank you for that. We actually have a super chatter, so we'll get to that first. Where is it? Joe New says, thoughts on Pitt's chances of sweeping the 4 non-conference games. Well, they broke so many streaks this past season. You know what I mean? They broke so many records, really. Kenny Pickett broke a lot of records. They won their first outright conference championship. They won 10 games in the regular season for the first time in 40 years. They have a chance to win 12 games overall for the first time in, almost 50 years. And understanding that they're playing 14 games instead of 12, but, still, same thing. It's still going to count. They broke a lot of streaks, but they couldn't break the streak of never having a perfect non-conference schedule. Ever since they joined the Big East in the early 1990s, they've never gotten through the non-conference without at least one loss. And I'm not counting 2020, where they only played one non-conference game and they beat Austin Peay. I'm not counting that. They've never had a season where they played more than one non-conference game and emerged with an undefeated non-conference record. 2022 is going to be tougher than 2021 was. And they couldn't get out of 2021 with a perfect 4-0. 2022, they open at home back-to-back with West Virginia and Tennessee. Wow. Talk about starting things off. Think about the hype that there's going to be for that opener against West Virginia. I mean, seriously. Assuming nobody gets hurt, roster doesn't go through any kind of crazy changes or anything like that, the roster we expect to see. Okay, imagine the roster we expect to see taking the field on September 3rd against West Virginia. Pitt will be ranked preseason, top 20, top 15, somewhere around there. And they're going to take the field against West Virginia in the season opener. My God, I'm already getting excited. Aren't you getting excited for that? Backyard brawl returns with a Pitt team that's going to have the highest expectations for any Pitt team in 20 years. That's going to be wild. That place is going to be jumping. It's going to be jumping. And West Virginia is going to be fired up to try and spoil the party. Oh, brother, I can't wait. That's going to be a blast. So they open with West Virginia and Tennessee. I think Hendon Hooker's coming back to Tennessee, right? So that's going to be a challenge. Then they go to Western Michigan. Road game against a MAC team. And then they finish the non-conference and finish September hosting Rhode Island at Heinz Field. Get another one of these where they have the FCS game and the final non-conference game, sort of a break before they jump into the ACC play. Look, let me see what Joe New's question exactly was. Chances of sweeping the non-conference games. Chances of sweeping. I mean, it's not going to be easy. But if they can do it, then I think the expectations will be through. If they can sweep those 4 non-conference games, if they get 4-0 coming out of September, I mean, they're realistically going to be like a top 12 team. I mean, realistically. Because you'll have 2 wins over Power 5 teams. You'll go on the road and beat a MAC team, and then you beat an FCS team. You're 4-0 going into your conference. I mean, they'll be top 12, top 10, somewhere around there. Can they do it? They can. They could have gone 4-0 this year. Will they do it? I don't know. I mean, I really don't. They can compete with all these teams. But that's going to be a big stage right off the bat. Maybe it would have been better to open with Rhode Island this year and give Kedon Slovis and these guys, I mean, particularly him, a chance to kind of settle into playing at Heinz Field and playing at Pitt and kind of, what the new situation's like. But you're going to find out right away. You're going to find out right away where they are when they play West Virginia in that opener. That's going to be wild. Can't wait. Another super chatter. I saw somebody. Zachary Herbster. I don't see any Zachary Herbster says, Chris, what do you think about Pat Narduzzi's response to the question about Mark Whipple today? Yeah, if you didn't see that on Wednesday here, Pat Narduzzi was asked, were you surprised about what Mark Whipple's decision? His decision to resign and leave the staff. And Narduzzi said, not really. And that was it. So Jerry DePaula, our good friend Jerry, followed up and said, any care to embellish on that? Care to, add anything to it? And Pat Narduzzi said, not really. Look, I think I've said this for a little bit, that I think it was known for a while that Whipple wasn't going to be around. I don't know if it was exactly known how it would go down, but I think or when or anything like that, but I think it was known that Mark Whipple wasn't going to be around in 2022. And so it was just a matter of kind of figuring out the details. I don't know if there was any agreement come to prior to the end of the season or what it was, but I think that, it just, I think Narduzzi knew it was coming. I don't know if he knew that, Whipple would resign, but I think he knew that there was going to be a change coming. And so I think he wasn't really surprised, but I think, I don't know if Narduzzi and Whipple got along all that well by the end. I think they could work together. They obviously had a lot of success together this season. And now Narduzzi's ready to move on. And I think he probably didn't want to throw Whipple under the bus and be real critical about him or anything like that and talk about how he's ready to move on, which hasn't always been the case with Pat Narduzzi. I think sometimes he hasn't chosen his words as diplomatically as you could when talking about coaches who have left the staff or who are no longer on the staff. But I thought he did a good job with that today of just trying to avoid the topic altogether. So that's all I really think about it. I don't know if there's much to read into it. I think what's done is done. Brock Madonic had our first question of the day. He says, what's up with the Brennan Marion saga? I hope Pat Narduzzi realizes the coaching potential in Marion. In my opinion, Pitt can't afford to lose a promising coach like Marion. Thoughts? Brennan Marion is... he's an interesting guy. I think he's an interesting guy. I think there's been a lot of talk about some of his social media activities, some of the things he posts on social media. Look, my thoughts, my opinions have always been that... If you spend too much time dwelling on the cryptic tweets of like high schoolers or college football players, you're just going to drive yourself nuts. Like the countless times of like this player tweeted, can't trust anybody anymore, or, everybody's counting me out or something like that. And we automatically assume it means that he feels disrespected at Pitt and he's going to transfer, but he's probably just tweeting about a class or a girl or friends or something. There are a million things that he could be tweeting about. No, I'm not saying that's the case with some of Brennan Marion's social media posts, but my point is, if you spend too much time trying to decipher some of the cryptic tweets and Instagram stories and different things that people put out, you're going to drive yourself nuts. Okay? You're going to drive yourself nuts. And I do it too. And I need to take this advice better myself. So that's my first thing. My second thing is, I don't think there's any question that Brennan Marion is a promising young coach. I don't think there's any question that Brennan Marion, either through his own initiative or through the initiative of others, is good at getting his name out there for jobs. And again, I don't know if that's him pushing for it or just others pushing for it for him, but we've seen, his name was on a list for the Temple head coach. His name was on the list for the Colorado offensive coordinator. His name was on the list for a Texas wide receiver coach. His name has been on lists all the time. And if you remember, and it's not like a distant memory, multiple times this season, pretty much ever since he was hired at Pitt, every time Pat Narduzzi is asked about Brennan Marion, he tells the same story. That when he went looking for a wide receiver coach, so many people were calling him about Brennan Marion. So many people were in his ear about Brennan Marion, sending him messages about Brennan Marion, that it got to the point where Pat Narduzzi was annoyed by it. And he almost didn't hire Brennan Marion because of it. And I think that's a telling story. You know what I mean? I think it's really illustrative of a lot of things. First of all, Narduzzi's approach to things. Second of all, how Marion's name gets out there a lot. And why you probably see him on lists. I think if Brennan Marion's here for 3 more years, probably every offseason his name will be on lists for jobs. And again, maybe that's his doing, maybe that's others doing. I don't know. I can't say. I can't say who connected him to the Colorado offensive coordinator job. I can't say who connected him to the Texas wide receiver job. I can't say who connected him to the Pitt wide receiver job initially. Even though it made a lot of sense, a local guy having success, and certainly with a lot of, seems to be pretty respected by a lot of people. Is he ready to be the offensive coordinator at Pitt? I couldn't say. He's been an assistant coach at the Power 5 level for 1 year. I'm all for giving guys a chance. I'm all for taking a chance on potential. I'm all for taking a risk with something in someone that's unproven, taking a shot because you see something in someone. I'm all for that. But it's also not my job riding on it. And if you're Pat Narduzzi, you may see potential in Brennan Marion. You may see a guy who has a bright future. You may see a guy who could be really good as a coordinator someday. And I think you could also maybe not be convinced that day is tomorrow. That it might take a little bit of time for him to grow into that role. Because again, this is his first Power 5 job. And it's a Power 5 receivers coach. And I think he's done well in that job. I mean, obviously, Jordan Addison's a Biletnikoff Award winner. I think all the receivers played really well this year. I think there are a lot of factors that go into that. I think Kenny Pickett was much better this year than he was in previous years. And I think some of the credit for the drops goes there, or some of the credit for the drop and drops goes there. But Brennan Marion certainly gets a lot of credit for that as well. That goes on his resume that he coached a Biletnikoff Award winner. But again, it's 1 year as a Power 5 assistant. And I don't know if Pat Narduzzi's in a spot right now where he wants to kind of risk that. Just on something of an unknown would be my assumption. So that's kind of my thought. So, Brock says, in my opinion, Pitt can't afford to lose a promising coach like Brennan Marion. I think it'd be, I'm sure Pitt would like to keep him on staff. I'm sure the players would love to keep him on staff. I'm sure Narduzzi would like to keep him on staff. If he gets a better offer, if he gets an opportunity to go call plays somewhere, then I think he'll go. If Pitt hands out some raises, if Pat Narduzzi gets an extension and the assistant coaches get some raises, then maybe he'll stick around for a little more money. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. I know what his goals are. He wants to be a coordinator. He probably wants to be a head coach one day. We'll see what path that follows, and we'll see how long it follows him at Pitt. Let's see. Josh Newark says, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. It seems like Christmas came early for Pitt. Huge get with the quarterback. Yeah, and and the offensive line too. That was the best tweet. Was Dave Borbley, who never tweets, said Santa brought some gifts and he brought all the offensive linemen back. And so let's talk about that for a second. These offensive linemen coming back. I mean, you knew Owen Drexel was going to return because he didn't participate in senior day, and so that left Carter Warren, Marcus Minor, and Gabe Hoy. And you were wondering what's going to happen there with those guys. Carter Warren had an invite to the Senior Bowl, so you thought, okay, well, there goes him. Let's see what happens with Minor and Hoy. And, I don't know what a lot of people expected. I don't know if a lot of people expected any of them to come back, really. Maybe you'd get one more in addition to Drexel. Maybe you'd get Hoy or maybe you'd get Minor, and you'd have to rebuild some and get some new starters in at some of the offensive line positions. But then over the last 2 weeks, it started kind of creeping out, started kind of flowing out of, you know what? These guys might come back. Maybe all of them. And we started hearing rumors about it. And like I said, we put it on the message boards that this was a possibility. And these rumors started coming out of they might all come back. You might get the entire starting offensive line back. And not just 5 guys, 7 guys. Because with various injuries and things like that, after Jake Cradle got hurt, I think Owen Drexel missed the game, and Blake Zabovic starting at center, and Matt Gonsalves is in there, and Gabe Hoy's playing right guard, and Gonsalves is playing right tackle, and it's so you've got 7 guys with starting experience, everybody, and they all come back. I mean, this is an offensive line coach's dream. It's an offensive coordinator's dream. It's a head coach's dream. It's a quarterback's dream to have this level of experience and talent returning. And Pitt's offensive line was pretty good this year. They weren't perfect, but they were pretty good. And I thought they got better at run blocking as the season progressed. I thought they did a good job protecting Kenny Pickett and giving him time to throw all those touchdown passes and throw all those yards. I thought they were pretty good. And I don't feel like, I think some people might say well, are they just kicking the can down the road? At some point, you need to get the young guys in there. You need to develop some of the younger linemen. You need to get some of these other guys playing time so you can keep this success up in future years. And I get that, but I also say go win now. You know what I mean? Jared Wayne's going to be a senior. He might come back in 2023. Jordan Addison's not going to be back in 2023, right? I mean, we know that. Vincent Davis will be gone by then. Who knows about Izzy Abanikanda? If he has a huge year this year, he's going to be a junior in 2022. If he has a huge year, 1,000 yards, 1,200 yards, I mean, would it shock you? He doesn't have a lot of, mileage on the wheels, right? He hasn't, it's not like they've run the wheels off of him. So if he has a big year, maybe, rushing and receiving combines for 1,700 yards and 18 touchdowns or something crazy like that, he could go. There's an opportunity to capitalize right now. There's an opportunity to strike right now. That's why they went and got a quarterback who could come in and play right now, because they're getting these offensive linemen back. They've got these players, these skill players. They've got these defensive guys. I mean, they are built to win right now. And so, like to get Branson Taylor more snaps, like to get Blake Zabovic more snaps, like to get Terrence Moore more snaps, like to get Matt Gonsalves more snaps. But you know what? Like to win games, like to win the Coastal, like to win the ACC. That's the priority. And going with your best guys is the way to do that, even if it means some of your younger guys won't get as much experience. All right, let's see here. Anthony Tennyson says the OC job is going to be big. Yeah, no doubt about it, Tony. I mean, they need to hire the right guy. I have to think that this job is pretty appealing right now. With the success that they had this season, with the players they have coming back, getting Kedon Slovis in here. And I think, look, I don't think Pat Narduzzi is the easiest guy to work with. I should say I think he's very demanding. I think he pushes his assistant coaches and his staff. I think he pushes them really hard. I think he expects a lot out of them. I think he's, pretty loyal. But I think he's very demanding, and I think that could be a hard environment to work in for a lot of guys. But at the same time, with an offensive coordinator, he might be demanding. He might push you, but he also is going to give you a lot of freedom. Yeah, I mean, you look at and you can, and the evidence of this is, if you look at Jim Chaney's offense, Matt Canada's offense, Sean Watson's offense, and Mark Whipple's offense, they were all very different from each other. I don't know if you would really say any of them were all that similar. They pretty much changed with the coach, and I don't necessarily know if that was because Pat Narduzzi wanted something different. I think Jim Chaney left. He wanted somebody he was comfortable with, so he brought in Matt Canada, who he had worked with before. Canada leaves after 1 year. He wants to bring in somebody. He wanted to bring in somebody who would stick around for a little while, who wouldn't be inclined to leave after 1 year. So he fires Sean Watson after 2 years, but they were so bad at throwing the ball with Watson that he wanted to bring in somebody who could develop quarterbacks and develop the passing game. It was never really about the style of offense or changing the style of offense. He wanted a certain style of offense. He wanted a pro-style offense. He would like to run the ball a lot if he can, but he also wanted to score a lot of points. I think the only time he really got specific about something offensively is when he brought in Whipple to throw the ball more and throw the ball better. And they did. They did that. So, I think Narduzzi can be very demanding on his offensive coordinator, but I think he also gives the offensive coordinator a lot of freedom. He wants the offensive coordinator to be the head coach of the offense. And I mean, he's talked about it halftime. He's in with the defensive guys working on adjustments. So you really, I think you have a certain amount of autonomy as Pat Narduzzi's offensive coordinator. And that's, I think that's got to be appealing. So you have that plus talented quarterback, returning offensive line, Biletnikoff winner, running backs, all these things we keep talking about. And an opportunity for a lot of success. I mean, it's got to be an appealing job. He should be able to find a really good candidate to take over as offensive coordinator. Scroll through here. Coaster King says, gun to your head right now, where do you think Rodney Gallagher and Tamir Robinson would commit today? I don't know. Rodney, those are two top guys in the 2023 recruiting class. I like Gallagher for Pitt. I like Pitt for Gallagher. I think they can get him. I think Robinson's going to be a little bit tougher. I know he talks a lot about Penn State, but I really don't know. That's a long ways away. Spent so much time lately thinking about transfer quarterbacks and returning offensive linemen. We'll see how this spring develops. It'll be a really interesting spring, I think. Talk is Pitt says, every time we bring in a transfer quarterback, they always start. And with Slovis having 2 years to play, I wonder how many quarterbacks on the roster will leave to the portal. Well, so as far as, so yeah, I mean, Slovis is being brought in to start. I don't think there's any question about it. He's not coming here to be the backup. Pitt didn't go after him to be the backup. Pitt went after him to come in and be the starter, to lead the offense in 2022. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the rest of the roster. Slovis will be a senior this year, but he'll have that option for a COVID year if he wants to play in 2023 as a super senior. Nick Patty will be a redshirt senior this year. He'll have the option of a COVID year. Davis Bevel and Joey Yellen will be redshirt juniors this year, so they'll have the option of a COVID year. So they'll have 2022, 2023, and 2024. They've got 3 years left. And then Nate Arnell is like a redshirt freshman, so he's got 4 years to play, right? So he's got the most time. I mean, the reality is, yeah, I mean, somebody's probably going to leave this quarterback room. Maybe two guys would leave this quarterback room if they come in and they see. I mean, it's almost sort of a foregone conclusion that Kedon Slovis is going to be the starter this year. So if you're the other guys, you have to look at it and say, all right, maybe he's only the starter this year, and then he goes to the NFL after this season. I mean, he was talked about as a potential, top, one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the class prior to the season. He was talked about as a potential Heisman Trophy candidate prior to this past season. So that potential is seen as being there. You know what I mean? He's got that, ability, or at least he's been evaluated to have that ability. And so maybe if you're one of the younger quarterbacks on the roster, and by younger, I mean guys like Bevel and Yellen who are going to be redshirt juniors this season, but maybe you're one of those guys and you say, all right, I just got to wait it out one more year. And then he's going to play here for 1 year, and then he's going to go to the NFL, and I'm going to have 2 years to play after that. And I can be the starter here for 2 seasons with this new offensive coordinator, but a coaching staff I like and I trust and all those things. Or you say, you get through spring, you say, I'm not sitting anymore. I'm going to transfer somewhere where I can be the starter for 3 years. That's probably that's the decision those guys are going to have to face. I would think for Nate Yarnell, Slovis starts this year, goes to the NFL. Yarnell will be a redshirt sophomore in 2023, so he'll have 3 years to play potentially as the starting quarterback. I think Nick Patty's going to have a tough decision. If Kedon Slovis is the starter, Nick Patty's going to have a tough decision because he's entering his redshirt senior season. Now he's got another year after that, but does he want to sit another year? I'm not sure. So yeah, I would think at least one, if not two of those quarterbacks will leave. It's probably what will happen. And look, quarterbacks go into the transfer portal all the time. I mean, you look around the transfer portal this year, there's tons of names because guys are leaving. Guys don't wait around. Guys don't wait around as long as Nick Patty has waited around. You know what I mean? Guys don't wait around as long as Davis Bevel has waited around. Joey Yellen didn't wait around as long as Patty and Bevel have waited around. So I give those guys a lot of credit for sticking it out thus far. And I can't fault them if they decide they're going to look elsewhere. Let's see here. Will Thompson says, tight end next year, who are they? Besides Bartholomew, why didn't they recruit one? Seems like we could use another real good one. Well, they did recruit 3 tight ends in that class, that 2021 recruiting class. They didn't get anybody this year, like freshmen who will come in 2022, but they recruited 3 guys in this last class. Bartholomew was one of them. Jake Renda and Cole Mitchell were the other 2. I think those are both really intriguing guys. Kai Wright is still on the roster. Could potentially be in the mix. I think Kmar Mims is still on the roster. Could potentially be in the mix. They're going to need to find another tight end to play. What'll be interesting to see, and it's tougher now because we don't know what the offense will look like. But what we saw a lot of last year is when they ran 2 tight ends, they would have Lucas Krull, sort of as an inline tight end, and Bartholomew would be in the backfield. I felt like that happened a lot. I'll have to look at the stats on Pro Football Focus to see how much Bartholomew lined up in the backfield, and as opposed to different spots, either inline or out wide or in the slot. But I feel like Bartholomew was in the backfield a lot. Now, the offense is going to change. We don't know what kind of formations they're going to use in personnel groups. But if they run 2 tight end stuff again, and it looks like that, it potentially could be Bartholomew in the crawl role, lining up in line or in the slot or that kind of thing. Although I don't know if he's quite the kind of guy that you're going to put in the slot as much as they put Lucas Krull out in the slot. And then maybe you have like Daniel Carter in the backfield as that, H-back, fullback, whatever you want to call it, who could catch passes, could occasionally even take a handoff, could serve as an extra protector, a blocker for the quarterback. I think you have an option there, of different types of guys you could use, and you could use somebody like Daniel Carter there to be, instead of going 2 tight end, go tight end and H-back. I think he could fill that role pretty well. A super chatter jump in here. Zach Herbster says, what will Pat Narduzzi's extension look like? I don't know. I think what it'll be is when it comes, and I think it'll probably come in the next couple weeks, years, obviously, because he's only signed through like 2024 right now. I think they'll probably rip up the contract and give him a new one that goes another like 7 years or something like that. Probably some more money than what it was, but I think what you'll see a lot of is more money for the assistant coaches and more investment in facilities and, more, recruiting budget and travel budget and all those kinds of things to enhance the program. I think Pat Narduzzi, for whatever you want to say about him, certainly he wants a raise. Everybody wants a raise, right? Everybody wants to make more money. But I think he also knows that his best chance to succeed is to elevate the program. And so if he can use a contract negotiation to leverage into, a bigger budget for the program, for assistant coaches, for facilities, for recruiting, for all those things, then I think that's what he'll do. And I think that's always part of every contract negotiation and extension that you see in college sports. You see it, includes a bump for the facilities, for the recruiting budget, for the assistant coaches. And that's what Pat Narduzzi knows that Pitt needs in order to continue succeeding as they have. And so I think that's probably what it'll mostly look like. Another super chatter jumped in. Joe News says, I'm hoping to see Donald and Ford next year. Other new faces you want to see emerge. Elliott Donald and Dorian Ford would be interesting at defensive tackle. They bring back Kalijah Cansey, obviously, and then you have Devin Danielson and David Green and Tyler Bentley. Those guys haven't produced a ton. I mean, Cansey obviously has, but Danielson, Green, and Bentley have just sort of been solid guys in the middle of the defensive line. You'd like to get more out of that, but I think you'll start seeing a little bit more out of Elliott Donald and Dorian Ford, maybe DeAndre Jules in there as well. As far as guys I'm looking forward to seeing, I think some of those young linebackers, and somebody mentioned Cam Bright. I don't know what Cam Bright's going to do. If I had to guess, I would say he's probably not going to come back as a super senior. I would say he's going to go to the NFL. So you're really looking at returning Servassier Dennis as a returning starter. And then you're going to have to fill out the rest of that group with guys young guys. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to fill out the rest of that group with, relatively inexperienced players. It's going to be Bengali Kamara and Solomon DeShields. Brandon George is going to be out there. I don't even know who else you throw into that mix. I mean, I guess, what's his name? Aiden Henningham. Preston Levant is a young guy. They're bringing in Marquand Pope and Kyle Lewis. Probably, one of them will probably see some snaps. They're going to have to roll with some young guys, and there are going to be some growing pains with that. But I'm interested to see Kamara play more. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think, Tyler Collins says Solomon DeShields is going to be a beast. I think he is too. I love that guy's potential as well. So you put Servassier Dennis in the middle, have him get those guys lined up right, and let them make plays with their athleticism and explosiveness and just physical skills. I think that's, you ask what new faces I want to see emerge. I mean, those are some of the guys. I also like the two JB receivers, Jalen Barton and Jaden Bradley. I think those guys will both, and they've already shown it. They're not quite as new or unseen or unproven as Kamara and DeShields. But I think Barton and Bradley will both be really good, and I think they'll both be really good this year. And I think they've each done little things that you say, boy, if that guy gets an opportunity on a consistent basis, he could do some big things. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that out of those guys. John Waffle wants to be a super chatter just to say Pitt is back. Nice. I appreciate it, John. Let's see. Get back into our chats here. I said we go as long as we need to, and so that's the plan. Let's see here. Talk as Pitt says Desmond Alexander wasn't the impact player I thought he was. I hope Keyshawn Camp comes back. Keyshawn Camp cannot come back. He was a super senior in 2021. His Pitt career is done. He has no option to return in 2022. I don't think they're going to get a seventh year for him. So he is out. Desmond Alexander, I think, is just a really solid player. I think the one year when he filled in after Rashad Weaver got hurt, 2019, I guess it was, he had like 5.5 sacks or something like that. I mean, I think he's a solid guy. I think he's solid, player out there. I don't think he's a liability. He's not an impact player. He's not a splash player, but I think he's a solid player out there. So I don't have any, if he wants to come back, I think that helps you. You've got 4 DNs you can rely on then. You have, him, you have Habakkuk Baldonado, you have John Morgan, you have Deion Hayes. I think you are pretty, I think you're set there. Without him, then you're going to need somebody, one of the younger guys to step up and be ready, whether it's like a Nakai Johnson or a Naquan Brown or, maybe Bam Brima is still outside of DN. You're going to need somebody else to step in to go with Baldonado and Morgan and Hayes. Let's see. Unknown Legend 57 says, I'd love to see the Akron wide receiver Kanata Mumfield transfer to Pitt. That would be a huge addition. Huge. If you guys don't know, Kanata Mumfield was maybe the best freshman wide receiver in the country this past season. Player at Akron. He went into the transfer portal, took an official visit to Pitt right before the dead period, right before signing day. Visited a bunch of schools and just has picked up offer after offer after offer. I feel like every day I see Kanata Mumfield tweet out a new offer that he's gotten. He's just a big time player at wide receiver, and if Pitt could land him and bring him in to play next to Jordan Addison and Jared Wayne and all those guys I just mentioned, it would be huge. And I think they're in the hunt. LSU offering made things more difficult because LSU is a big offer. You know, LSU is a pretty appealing school, and that's going to be a real challenge to beat LSU. But Pitt's in the hunt, and I think they've got they've got some momentum with Mumfield. I think he's very interested in them. I think the visit went really well, but it's going to be a battle. He'll decide, though, and try and enroll in January. So we'll find out about that one sooner rather than later. Brian Becker says, Brian Becker points out that Kanata Mumfield is now following Kedon Slovis. So that's interesting. Those things are always good to see. It's always interesting to see when guys start following each other. You know, I know I said that we don't want to read too much into social media sometimes, but those are always interesting to note. You know, sometimes you can pick up something from looking at who guys follow on social media. Josh Newark, one of our guys, says we need a meetup next Wednesday in Atlanta. Occupy Mercedes-Benz. I don't know what you guys' travel plans are. I'm flying down late on Wednesday night, so I don't think I get in until like 9:30, 10 o'clock on Wednesday night, and I'm too old to really go out after that. So I don't know if I can make a meetup at any time on Wednesday night. And, of course, Thursday night is the game, so that's going to be pretty challenging to do any kind of meetup. And then I fly home to Pittsburgh on Friday morning. So that's a challenging one as well. I don't know if I'm really going to be able to, handle any meetups. I guess we could do like lunch or something on Thursday before the game. But let's be honest, if we were all going to get together as a Panther-Lair Show meetup, I'm pretty sure we would all want to be drinking, right? So I don't know if we're going to go to lunch. I can't have a liquid lunch the day of a game. I need to be a little more focused than that. So someday we'll have an in-person Panther-Lair Show. I don't know when. Let's see here. Scrolling through, a lot of people excited. A lot of people excited about the addition of Kedon Slovis, excited about the offensive line coming back. Nobody's talking about how Pitt basketball beat Jacksonville, man. Did you see that 8-minute stretch they had in the second half? They made 9 of 12 field goals, went on a 22-3 run. It was sick. Come on, guys. Get with it. Let's see here. Brock Madonic says, is Chubba Purdy still an option? So this is interesting. Chubba Purdy, transfer quarterback from Florida State, took an official visit to Pitt the weekend after the ACC championship game, like that one weekend where they had an opportunity to host official visitors. And Chubba Purdy came in, took an official visit, and he liked it a lot. I think Pitt did really well with him. I think he was really impressed with what Pitt has to offer. And he's certainly a really intriguing player, really athletic quarterback. He can run a lot. He can throw well. He was a big-time prospect coming out of high school. And I think he was pretty, he was thrown into action at weird times at Florida State. And Florida State, kind of like USC this past season, is kind of a mess. You would think that when they get Kedon Slovis, that more or less closes the door on any other transfer quarterbacks. I don't think they've completely shut down the idea of taking someone like a Chubba Purdy, just because Purdy has 4 years to play. I mean, he's effectively like a Nate Yarnell. I mean, he's a year older than Nate Yarnell, but he's got 4 years to play. So he's got a lot of time because he's got, he just finished his redshirt freshman season. He's a redshirt sophomore this year. Or he will be a redshirt sophomore in 2022, and then he's got the COVID year. So he's got sophomore, junior, senior, plus super senior year. So essentially, if you were to get him, I mean, that would be like a developmental guy that you would have for 4 years. So it'd effectively be like a high school quarterback. And so if they want to bring in someone like that, someone they could develop, like I say, over the next 4 years, and maybe get starting work out of him 2 years from now, then yeah, I think then it would still be an option. Does he want to do that? Does he want to go into a situation where I mean, he's going in expecting to sit for at least a year, if not two, before he really gets that opportunity. I'm not sure. Typically, I think when guys transfer, they're looking to get an opportunity right away. But he's young. I mean, he's early in his eligibility, so maybe he's open to it. But I think it's going to be tough, and they have limited spots too. I mean, Pitt's scholarship numbers are really tight right now, and they need guys to leave just to fit in everyone that they've got coming in to get their high school recruits and transfers and super seniors and all that stuff coming in. Scroll down here. I think we covered most of the questions here. Scrolling and see if there's anything else we want to see. What else? I don't know. I feel like we've gone for quite a while here tonight. Joe New says, proud to see our guys on those award shows. Yeah, I mean, I think that was certainly... We talked about it when it happened, right? Kenny Pickett being a Heisman finalist and Jordan Addison winning the Boletnikoff. We talked about... we talked about how that was good publicity for Pitt. It was good exposure for Pitt. It got Pitt... on national TV and got people sort of noticing Pitt a little bit, and I think it was huge. I think it had a real impact. I think it, anytime you can get your school talked about, and this happened more and more as the season went on, right? It wasn't just about the Heisman finalists and the Boletnikoff Award. It was starting around the Clemson game that, Pitt started being one of the schools that was getting talked about sort of weekly on like College Game Day and ESPN and different, and Sports Center and those kinds of shows. Pitt was one of the schools that would get talked about. It was relevant what they did. Their outcomes and their games mattered on the national scale. They mattered in the conference and they mattered sort of nationally. And all of that, every time Pitt is mentioned in a positive light, every time Pitt is mentioned as being relevant in college football is a good thing for recruiting. It's a boost to recruiting because you're getting kids to read about you. You're getting kids to think about you, and you're getting in their minds. You know what I mean? You're getting an opportunity for them to be exposed to Pitt football. And so the award shows absolutely did that as well. And I think it was, I think it helped with getting a guy like Kedon Slovis. I really do. McManwich says, what do you think about Pitt's coaching staff as recruiters? Do they have people who can capitalize on this year's success? Well, they've got Charlie Partridge, which is a really good start. He's a really good recruiter. Obviously, he does a great job in Florida. He does a great job with anybody he's put on to recruit. I think Tim Salem is an underrated recruiter. I think Pitt fans need to give him more credit. I mean, you look at the guys they got in this class. Addison Copeland and Jimmy Scott from Buffalo, those two guys, those are both Tim Salem guys. Sam Okunlola, the 4-star defensive end, that's a Tim Salem guy. Kyle Lewis is a Tim Salem guy. He got some of the biggest kids in this class, some of the biggest recruits in this class were Tim Salem targets. He got Gavin Bartholomew onto the roster last year. And so, I think he's a better recruiter than we give him credit for. I think Corey Sanders is emerging as a really good recruiter. I think Archie Collins is pretty good. I think Brennan Marion is a good recruiter. I think it'd be interesting to see what he can do with a full year on staff, if he can, capitalize a little bit on some of the success that they've had. And who else? Who am I not thinking of? I think Dave Borberly does a good job with the offensive linemen that he recruits. I think, Randy Bates does a good job when he gets out on the road like that. I think Andre Powell is pretty good in the Maryland area, DC area. This and then I think Pat Narduzzi is really good. I think Pat Narduzzi is a really good recruiter. I think he's able to get the job done as a head coach. Head coaches have a unique role when it comes to recruiting, and I think he's done a really good job in that regard. So, on the whole, I think it is the kind of staff that can capitalize on the success they had this season. It's going to be a matter of, we'll see. We'll see this spring and through June. We'll see what kind of recruiting success they have, because that's going to tell the tale on how well they could capitalize on this season's success. All right, let's see here. Tyler Collins says, I heard a rumor that Brennan Marion is the interim offensive coordinator. I don't know. I mean, Pat Narduzzi today said that he knows in his heart, but he doesn't want to tell us. So, I think it's going to be kind of like a combination. I think ultimately one guy will be calling the plays, but I think Marion's going to have a lot to do with how the passing game looks, and Salem's going to have a lot to do with how the running game looks, or that kind of thing. It's going to be a group effort. Narduzzi said all the offensive coaches are doing their jobs as they would in any week. I think Kenny Pickett's going to be up in the booth with a headset, at least listening in and offering suggestions when he can. And it'll be a group effort, I think, as far as the interim offensive coordinator. I don't know what that's going to be after that. We'll see what those guys do and where they go once they get past the bowl game and once a new coordinator gets hired. All right, we will definitely have coverage of everything. Recruiting, transfers, offensive coordinator, Peach Bowl. Like I said, I'm going to be down at that game. So there's only one place you want to be, and it's Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards. And I should point those out, too, because what we do here every Wednesday on this live stream, this podcast with the chat and all that stuff, that's basically what we do on the message boards all day, every day at Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com. It's the place to go. And so, you can just go and have conversations with all of your closest Pitt fan friends all day, every day. Panther-Lair.com. Home field, get the vintage rock look. I've got it on. It's awesome. The shirt is so soft. It fits so well. It's my favorite t-shirt. One of my two favorite t-shirts. My other one is another home field shirt. And I've got my favorite sweatshirt, which is a home field sweatshirt. So, yeah, you need to get on it. Homefieldapparel.com to get some of the best Pitt gear you're going to find. And you can, if you're a first-time shopper there, use the promo code LAIR, L-A-I-R. You get 15% off your order. Homefieldapparel.com. Go check them out. Great question from Zach Herbster at the end here. It says, will you have a live show next week? I have not decided yet. I'm not going to be able to do it on Wednesday night. As I say, I'm flying to Atlanta. Maybe we'll push it and do it Tuesday night. Actually, there's a Pitt basketball game that night. We might not have a live show next week. Might not have one. Might not be able to do it. But I'm thinking about plans on how to do a post-game show, even if it's like Friday morning or something like that. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted. Stay tuned to Twitter. Stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com. And most of all, have a great weekend, everybody. It's the holiday weekend. Whatever you choose to do with it, whoever you choose to do it with, enjoy it. You know what I mean? You had a great week of Pitt sports, right? Everything went right this week for Pitt sports. Football, basketball, recruiting, it was all aces. You know what I mean? You had a great week with your favorite team. You are going into, the best holiday weekend of the year. Enjoy your time with the family. Enjoy it, or whoever you're with. Enjoy it. Have a great weekend. And we will we'll figure out what we're doing for a live show next week. But even if we don't have a live show next week, we'll be back the week after that because, as John Waffle points out, we do live shows every week through the off season, every Wednesday night at 8:30. So thanks to everybody for a great, I guess if we don't have one next week, this might be our last one of the year. So thanks everybody for a great year of these shows. It's been so much fun. It's grown. We've gotten a bigger audience. It's been a lot of fun with everybody who chimes in on the live stream, and I really do appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. So thanks to everybody for coming in tonight, joining our conversation. It was a lot of fun, and I think here's looking forward to 2022. We'll see you at the Peach Bowl if you're down there, and we'll talk to you afterward in some way, shape, or form. Have a great weekend, everyone. Have a great holiday. We'll talk to you soon.